We're ready to resume. Appreciate the gentleman from Missouri, Chairman of the Small Business Committee, being with us, Mr. Graves, and you're recognized for 4 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I appreciate it, and I appreciate the work that the committee is doing. Given that the federal government spends nearly $500 billion each year on contracts, the federal procurement market is incredibly important for all of the small businesses. And improving small business opportunities for federal contracts is a triple play. The small businesses win more contracts, workers win because small businesses create jobs, and the taxpayers win because the competition saves the government money and it improves the health of the industrial base. Over the last 3 years, the Armed Services Committee and the Small Business Committee have worked together on procurement issues, and I'm pleased to report this collaboration is working very well. For the first time in 8 years, it appears that the federal government met its small business goal. However, there's still a great deal of work to be done to ensure that the contracting community has the tools and guidance it needs to get the best results, and that small businesses don't face unnecessary burdens and barriers to the entry in the procurement process with the federal government. And to that end, the Small Business Committee recently marked up 5 bills aimed at further improving the competitive viability of our industrial base, and I introduced a 6th bill that has not been marked up yet. But I believe these initiatives, all of which have bipartisan support, tie into the recommendation presented to this committee in 2012 by the Panel on Business Challenges in the Defense Industry, which is led by Mr. Schuster and Mr. Larson. The small business bills should complement the efforts of the Armed Services Committee in this Congress. Therefore, I'm here today to support the inclusion of these 6 bills in this year's National Defense Authorization Act, and I detail them each of the initiatives in my written statement, but I'll just briefly mention them here. The first 3 bills seek to make general improvements to the small business programs. The first addresses the treatment of veterans and service-disabled veterans seeking to do business with the government by improving the verification process with these firms. The second bill tackles the lack of reliable data on the contract bundling and consolidation process, which are practices that unnecessarily preclude small businesses from competing for contracts. And the third bill is a provision embraced by this committee in the fiscal year 2013 defense authorization, which raises the government-wide small business contracting goal from 23% to 25%. And as spending levels decrease, this is going to protect small businesses at the heart of the industrial base. The remaining 3 bills focus on challenges for small business in the construction industry. The first makes it easier for small businesses to obtain the necessary bonding to compete, and does so at no cost to the taxpayer. The second takes the lessons learned from the policy enacted by the Corps of Engineers on reverse auctions and expands them government-wide to protect small businesses and the taxpayers alike. And the third improves the way we conduct design-build contracting to decrease the cost to government while it increases small business opportunities. This last bill is pending before the Committee on Oversight and Government Reform, which I understand that committee of jurisdiction has to be consulted. The first 5 bills received bipartisan support in the committee, passed by voice vote, and are supported by numerous small business groups. And the final bill has support from agencies, industry, and the bipartisan group of members. Each bill supports the intentions, if not specific recommendations, of the panel report produced by this committee last Congress. And most importantly, each bill provides more opportunity to small businesses to create jobs at a price that is in the best interest of the taxpayers. I'm pleased that our 2 committees are working very well together and very cooperatively, and I hope this language can be incorporated into this year's defense authorization. With that, I thank you for your time.
Any questions? Gentleman from Colorado, recognized for 2 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'd like to thank Chairman Graves for appearing before the committee today. I would also like to offer my thanks for your support for the inclusion of House Resolution 2882, the Improving Opportunities for Service-Disabled Veteran-Owned Small Businesses Act, in the 2014 National Defense Authorization Act. The Small Business Administration and the Department of Veterans Affairs both verify the status of service-disabled veteran-owned small businesses. As a member of the House Small Business Committee and the House Veterans Affairs Committee, I have heard numerous stories from veterans about problems with the current procurement programs for service-disabled veteran small businesses. Under the current system, a company can qualify at one agency and not another for procurement preferences. The inconsistency often adds cost, confusion, and opens the door to fraud. Moreover, the current process requires a VA to make decisions that are outside their expertise, such as determining business structures. My legislation will transfer the VA verification process for firms to the SBA, unify the definitions of service-disabled small businesses and veteran-owned small businesses, and add transparency. I want to again thank Chairman Graves for coming to this committee today. I urge the committee to accept Chairman Graves' request for the inclusion of these small business measures in the National Defense Authorization Act, including my legislation, H.R. 2882. And with that, I yield back.
Other questions? Appreciate the gentleman being here. Thank you.
Thanks, Mr. Chairman.
Next, we have a gentleman from New York, Mr. Hanna. Gentleman's recognized for 4 minutes.
Thank you. Good morning, Chairman Thornberry, Ranking Member Smith, and other members of the committee. Thank you for taking the time to listen to me today. Over the course of almost 30 years in private business, I grew a small firm from the ground up that employed over 450 people over time and successfully completed thousands of commercial and municipal projects in upstate New York. Given that experience, I know how important small business construction contracting is. It is an industry where small business can grow into large businesses. Construction contracting builds communities. However, there are a few small areas where the Federal Government's policies on construction contracting hurt small businesses, taxpayers, and agencies themselves. This is particularly important given the scope of Federal construction contracting. Construction in architect and engineering, or A&E contracting, represents about 1 in 6 prime contractor dollars awarded to small business. That was over $17 billion in prime contracts in the first fiscal year of 2012. Therefore, as chairman of the Subcommittee on Contracting and Workforce of the Small Business Committee, I have introduced 2 bills this Congress and co-sponsored a third intended to bring some common sense reform to this area. I'll discuss them briefly, but want you and I'm asking you to include them in this year's National Defense Authorization Act. The first, H.R. 776, the Security and Bonding Act of 2013, addresses surety bonding. As the construction projects get larger, it becomes harder for these small businesses to obtain necessary bonding to bid these projects. In these cases, they are sometimes forced to turn to disreputable sureties who issue worthless bonds that place the taxpayers at risk. This is a no-cost bill that makes it easier for small businesses to get legitimate bonds and that makes sure that all bonds are worth more than the paper on which they are written. This makes sure that agencies get a quality construction job and that taxpayers get what they pay for and small businesses get paid. The other 2 bills I want to address the way we contract with A&E. The first is reverse auctions. While there is evidence that reverse auctions can be a good way to buy commodities, 2 studies by the Army Corps of Engineers demonstrated that it doesn't work for construction services contracts. Therefore, I introduced 2751, the Common Sense Construction Contract Act of 2013. This bill takes the lessons learned from the Army Corps of Engineers and applies them to other federal agencies. Likewise, the Corps has also led the way on design-build contracting, implementing a 2-phase approach to procurement. Given the cost of bidding for design work, the 2-phase approach allows more businesses to compete and saves the government money. Unfortunately, all civilian agencies have not learned from the Army Corps of Engineers experience. So I've co-sponsored 2750, the Design Build Efficiency and Jobs Act of 2013. This bill encourages other agencies to adopt the policies in the place of the Army Corps of Engineers. While I encourage you to include all of the contracting bills recently marked up by the Small Business Committee, given the significance of construction contracting, I hope you will incorporate 776, 2750, and 2751 into this year's National Defense Authorization Act. I'm happy to answer any questions.
Are there any questions, Mr. Hanna? Okay. Appreciate you being here. Thank you for your testimony.
Thank you for your time.